Hi there, everyone. I'm Dr. Randall George Nozawa. They call me the Bounce Back Blind Guy. And welcome to New Enlightened Lifestyle Medicine. This is my co-host, Patrick Herbert. Hello, Patrick.
Hi, how's it going?
Well, as you can see, taller and better looking. Thank you.
Oh, yes, of course. Of course.
Anyway, everyone, we've got a great show today. And I've given it this title, Bad to the Bone, Behind the Extreme. Okay, so what's this all about? All right, for all of you out there, this could be in families, your own family, other families that you know, other people that you know. There are few out there that are just bad to the bone. Okay, and in other words, as far as you can remember, these people in your lives, and like I said, could be in your own families, right? Is that they pose a danger to themselves and a danger to others. In other words, there's a certain amount of arrogance there and care only for themselves and what they think. Kind of disregard of societal rules and interpersonal connections. And basically remorseless of what they do to other people, meaning that they only want to bring pleasure to themselves. And remorseless meaning that a lot of them connive and premeditate a lot of things of ill will toward other people. And this you can see in some folks. And like I said, it could be in families that you already know, brother, sister, could be mom and dad, or people that you met at school. But there are just those few that are just a little bit off. And we all have mind, body, energy. So what makes their energy go in that direction? Okay, because you got to look at it this way here. Our subconscious minds run us, but once we recognize those dictatorial programs, we can change them. We can change how we think. And so, but these certain people here just don't. And what happens is that they continue on like this, and the conditioning becomes stronger and stronger, and they become, it's more than just ego-driven, that they become more into themselves, and they pose not only dangers to themselves, but to other people, and they're remorseless if they end up hurting other folks. Okay, and so with my co-host here, we're going to dive into this, and he's going to give you some explanations of what's possibly out there. And we spoke a lot on archons and demons, and please keep an open mind to that. And but by the way, before I let Patrick take this on here, is that there is a psychiatrist out there and an author who's deceased now, but his name is Scott Peck, and he wrote a book called The Road Less Traveled. And he noticed in his practice that there's about 10 to 15% of his patients that he just couldn't figure out. They'd have these odd symptoms or these odd behavior, and a lot of it was an uncaring about others, and a different viewpoint where they did not have any sympathy, empathy, or compassion for other people. They just did not care. Okay, and then from there he delved into the deeper world of the negative energy or negative spirit world, and we'll have another show on that. But so for everyone out there, please tell everyone about the show and all that. But this deals with more than just behavior, about why people do what they do. And there are some out there that are just extreme. And then this is the explanation behind the extreme. And it's these folks that literally are bad to the bone. And no matter what you do family-wise to love them, nurture them, support them, they're the same. And they become more of what they are. More conniving, more premeditating, more creating and thinking of doing well and getting away with it and continuing on into adult life. So, Patrick, this is kind of how I wanted to start, and you've got a lot of experience with this and a lot of study in it. So take it away.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of things to look at, and I guess in one way, I'm going to need to bring some of the audience people through my story a little, just to get a kind of a background information on it.
Yeah, I was hoping you did that.
I went through a very radical, supernatural, unbelievably magical spiritual awakening, along with my wife. And it happened to us synchronously. It happened to us at the same time. It happened, the level of miracles and the experiences that we shared together. I've seen, and we have both seen, we have both seen and experienced things like, it's interesting to talk about, because it's, one of these things was we saw the symbol made out of clouds for the Eye of Ra in the sky. And this is during our awakening. And there were other very mystical, very magical moments such as that. Now, a lot of the things that I learned while going through this, I probably would have never believed them if it weren't for the fact that we experienced it. And one of these things, of course, is archons. And to this day, I experience this phenomenon on one level or another, pretty much every day. Okay, so what are archons? You have to go back to Gnosticism, and in all actuality, it's based. There are different names to describe a same metaphysical, supernatural, inorganic, negative force that has been plaguing humanity for as long as we've had our own written record. Now, time is an interesting thing, depending on what you believe, of course. A lot of time, there are two, interpretations of why we're here and how we got here. One of them is the Darwin, perspective, which was random interaction that created life and life forms. And the other perspective is things like simulation theory, which is and intelligent design. Now, which is, before my experiences, I believed in the Darwin model. Because that's all I knew. I didn't have anything to compare it to. That's what I learned in school, that we were all a bunch of monkeys and somehow started standing up, all our hair fell out, and we suddenly became super smart, just like that. But now, after experiencing the magical side of reality, which I didn't even know could happen, I tend to believe the intelligent design. And the more that I've looked into it, and the more that I've studied about it, it's become fairly obvious to me. Now, to people who go through their lives, and for the most part, we go to work, we get up, like the work, buy, consume, die. We don't typically ever look up from our life. We just do what our parents have done, what we were programmed to do by our teachers and authority figures, and we carry on by the religion. All of it is one level of programming, from religion to your upbringing to your schools to the health systems. To all of it is programming. I got to get up. I got the headache. I got to take this pill. It's everything I've been told. I bring into my experience, and I go through life that way until someone like me and like you, Dr. Randall, boom, something happens huge, that knocks you off that horse completely, and you have no choice but to look for reasons. Why did this happen to me? What's going on? What is life really all about? If I've lived my life like I've been told and brought up to believe, I've been, I do my best, like you say, doing everything right, by whatever metric has been established per your upbringing, because, we all have difference of opinions on what is right and things like that. So, but it's basically how we've been raised, what we taught ourselves, how we've been influenced, and then we carry out that programming every day. So, okay, we start to question, okay, well, I did everything right. Like you've said, Dr. Randall, say, I've done everything right. Why did this happen to me? Why was I knocked off course like this? And that, for both of us, has become a very complicated story, because it's not just and of course we all find out that it is all of our personal journey. Now, before I get too far off track here, there is from my experience, there is a negative force, and it is, dialing it back, looking into it further, reading esoteric material, being led to, for instance, Tom from montauk.net, his material, reading David Icke's material, coming to discover that there's this negative inorganic force. And this goes back, I mean, this is in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were discovered, 1,500 years ago in Egypt. And though they predate that, we go back, we look at ancient civilizations. We look at, go to South America, you go to any continent back 6,000 years ago, and you've got evidence of a race of beings that had come and had interacted with humanity on some level or another, and then I guess kind of had just taken off. You've got the flyers, you've got the jinn in Arabic-speaking countries, made of smokeless fire. Then you've got the archons, what the Gnostics said are made of luminous fire. And then you've got you've got this all over the world at the same time. And this is, of course, before there were telephones, before there was the internet, before there were airplanes that you could catch to go speak to someone on this side of the globe and then compare notes on the other side, It's before that happened. So, and then, being led through all the documentation and reading, through the Dead Sea Scrolls and reading all of Tom's material, I've read so many different sources, but I was always very, very, in a very magical kind of way, I was drawn to Tom's material and also David Icke's, and they provide an excellent amount of information as to this. What is this? What are these creatures? What are these aliens? What is this alien intervention? And of course, at 11 years old, I had a UFO above my head. Now, trying to explain these things to people who haven't had those experiences is next to impossible. If you haven't seen a UFO, by your own nature, unless you have a very open mind, you're probably going to reject that information as being, foolish or silly or something from science fiction. Or as my parents said to me, they said, well, I had a really good imagination as a kid. Of course, now after they've, been seeing stuff happen that I said was going to happen, they're changing their tune, and more information is coming out. Now, sorry about that. That beep always happens when we're doing this show. Okay, so we have these beings, these entities, and come to discover that they function more like electromagnetic parasites. Now, we all have our own sphere. We all have our own electromagnetic field around our bodies. Everything at the end of the day is energy. We've learned this from Tesla. We've learned this from Einstein. Quantum physics. Okay, so now we also have a chakra system. We have etheric bodies. We have an energy body. You learn about this, I believe, in yoga, very Eastern religion-based approach to life. This is very well documented phenomenon. Now, when you look at what humans can see and perceive, or in the terms of the total electromagnetic frequency spectrum, which is huge, what we know of as known energy represents 0.005% of that full electromagnetic frequency spectrum. And what we can see within that tiny percentage is even smaller. So by our nature within these bodies, we're blind in a way. No offense to you, Dr. Randall, of course. We see a very small, we see this, we're like, it's like our body, which acts as kind of like a spacesuit, tunes us specifically into these very tiny frequencies. And we can't, everything that's beyond that, we can't see, perceive, or interact with, okay? But you would imagine that since we see such a very small range, that there are actually, there's more that exists that we're unaware of course. And as it has been described when it comes to these negative entities, is that they are inorganic energy beings, and what they can do is that they can entrain into our electromagnetic fields, and they can manipulate us on the mind level. So they're like mental parasites. One way of looking at this is those crazy thoughts that we all know go through our head from time to time. Now, when you consider, and like I said, there's a lot of background to this. One way, let me give you, so I've got literally one of Tom's books open right in front of me regarding some of this information, because it is complicated. So, and we have all these terms that mean certain things. We have terms for spirit, we have terms for soul, we have, and a lot of times those terms are used interchangeably. One of the things I love about Tom's material is he tends to clear it up in really wonderful, really straightforward ways. So I wanted to borrow this from him real quick.
Yeah.
When we talk about the higher spark and the higher self, or the spirit, Tom writes that the spirit is the core of individualized consciousness, that permanent aspect of one's being representing the true self, or the higher self, which accumulates experiences and spiritual wisdom throughout life, survives physical death, and remains intact upon reincarnating to continue growing towards the fulfillment of its potential. If it is the divine God spark, the seed of free will, the holographic fragment of the Creator residing at the very center of your being, the I that is you, the inner conscious observer capable of observing events, even its own self-observation or self-awareness. Now, okay, that was actually taken from the article on the spiritless. All right, so now that we've defined the spirit and this higher self, this independent being that interacts with our body through the soul, we learn to discover, okay, so we've got this eternal part of ourselves, and that we refer to as the higher self. And this eternal part of ourself would obviously have our best interest in mind. And the thought processes that our higher self would give to us would be relatively for our benefit, right? To promote our learning and our spiritual evolving. Well, in the case of here, those crazy thoughts aren't yours. They're not coming from your higher self. At least the way that I like to frame this is that there serves no evolutionary purpose, spiritual or otherwise, to entertain literally what could be described as crazy psychopathic thoughts that might come through your mind in waves. And and it's interesting. And they're, at least by my own experience and those that I've talked to who are very open about it, sometimes these thoughts can be really, they're you think that if you don't have this level of self-awareness that Tom describes here, you're going to think that these are your thoughts. These are your crazy thoughts. And one of the things I talked to you about when I would talk about negative forces and such would be, for a lot of people that don't realize that, they might tend to act on those in an impulsive kind of way. Yeah. And this could be a good, this could be one of the reasons for why people do act the way they do. And then, it's not even as simple there, because it's all tied into reality and how we're experiencing this reality. And what is this negative force? Why is there a negative force here? And even that gets even more complicated, because we have, what, like I had in my other interviews, Robert Monroe had described, at least in his books, a energetic commodity known as loosh. And this energetic commodity was something that the archons, or these negative forces, were after. And that's this commodity leaks into our electromagnetic field when we are experiencing fear, panic, much like how your body will release chemicals in a state of fear, in a state of panic. This etheric body that we have a flow of energy that runs through in and out of each chakra as it goes up. Well, as our higher chakras, which, are things that are related to our heart and and the crown and our third eye and the spiritual, we could call these spiritual chakras the top three. Apologize for that. And we could call those three spiritual chakras. We could call those ones that's like prime energy. If it gets that high, now we've got the lower chakras, which are related more to base behaviors such as reproduction, fight or flight, fear, anger, fighting, and such, and so on. So when we are experiencing emotional, I guess you would say, chaotic emotional, or a chaotic environment, or different levels of negative emotions, those higher spiritual chakras tend to shut down, and especially the heart. And I've experienced this phenomenon when being attacked psychically, as they will call it a psychic mental attack by these archons. I've experienced this personally, and it's got its own feeling. It's got its own a very unique draining feeling, and you feel it in the area where it is happening. As I've documented on my site multiple times, I get attacked by these beings, and per the rules of engagement here, before they attack you, they have to give you a synchronicity or a sign that they're going to attack you. And one of the things they show is, the sign has to have meaning to you, but most of us here, we're not aware of this. We're in a trance-like state. We don't know that there's even a game here. We think, and if we've all been conditioned to believe that this is just the sum total results of random interaction from an explosion happening at relative at some point in the past, then we're going to, we're not going to think of these things. A lot of people automatically reject spiritual notions, especially those that might fall outside those belief systems that we're all brought up to believe. So it's, and Dr. Randall, I know that you, in your own experiences, because after what had happened to you, you wanted to know, out of curiosity, why are people like this? Why do they hurt? Why are people hurting each other? Why are people losing their minds? Why do they go crazy? Why are there some people who don't have a light on inside of them? And of course, sharing that information about the spiritless and such, God, that answers the question beautifully. Would I have believed this prior to my experiences? Like I said earlier, that's a tough one, because I had to experience a lot of this stuff to believe it. But to me, it's 100% real. It's totally real. I've been, since, becoming awakened, I've had people brought into my life that were exactly right down to the T, the way that Tom writes about the spiritless. They behaved in those, they're all ego, all self-serving, like the compassion and empathy completely fake. And even, it's that those behavioral patterns are the same ones that we mark off, at least in the medical community, as being sociopaths or psychopaths. Same characteristics, same behavioral patterns. So, yeah, and wow, like I said, it gets really complicated, and I probably sound like I'm all over the place right now, because, it's just an interesting phenomenon. Now, whenever an attack is starting to happen with me, I get the signs. Usually it's a 666. And these are, these attacks are what I write about. And then the next thing I know, some very extremely crazy thoughts will begin to go through my mind. My daughter will begin to get latched on to things like she'll demand, we'll be in the car, and she'll suddenly start demanding to go to a park that she sees that's got a fence around it. She knows she can't get to a park that has a fence. And she knows we're in the car driving, and she knows we're going someplace else, but she will start to become very irritated about this, wanting to go, start screaming, start demanding, and then literally go into a meltdown. And then my wife it'll start to affect her, and then these thoughts will start to affect me. So it's a remarkable phenomenon. So what's happening while this is, while my daughter or my wife are being brought into a more chaotic state, the energy flow and the chakras are shutting down. So they're starting to leak into their electromagnetic field this energy flow. And that is, what they say is the whole point. This is the loosh that they describe that they need, because in some circles it's because these unseen entities have, they say that they're the fallen, or they've fallen so far they've been cut off. They can just mimic. They don't create. They need and somehow to another, to sustain themselves, they need this energy that they could get from us. Now, if you look at our world is completely chaotic and negative, very negative and chaotic. All the media, all the news, everything we experience is nonstop. So if you were to consider that perhaps this life that we have here, this experience that we have here, which in our experience of it right now, time-wise, this is a grain of sand on a beach, that some negative force did come and start to take humanity in a different direction that would have been naturally gained by the way that it was heading before. Something began to intervene. Something began to turn everything negative. I mean, and you could really see it clear as day. I mean, like look at this pandemic that's going on right now. And as you research this stuff through, you realize that it's more an image of fear rather than an actual thing. It's more about scaring people. and driving them mad and driving them crazy and scaring them for what? We have the New World Order. We've got things that are being locked down. We're getting huge, major, massive changes in humanity, and none of them are positive. And all of them are based on what can be described as a very over-the-top reaction to something. So, rather than go on and talk about it, Dr. Rand, I want to hand it back to you just to see where we could go with this, because it is a complicated subject. And so, based on what I've said, go ahead and we'll bounce back and forth, because I kind of got a little sidetracked there, because there's no linear path of looking at this, and how I was led from material to material to research it was, in a sense, it was all over the place, but it would all bring me back to the same conclusion. Yes, there's some negative force that is harassing us. Yeah. So, and as you've experienced a lot of these types of behavioral patterns, crazy people, essentially. Yeah. So, all right, go ahead. I'll give it back to you.
Thank you for the background, because one, I so appreciate you as a co-host, and just being on a show like this, because with my lifelong mission, which is congruent to yours, educate, inspire, and empower, people, and just the naming of this show here, Bad to the Bone, and Behind the Extreme, is that you have people in your life right now that and so do I, more mainly dealing with my daughters, is that some of these kids that I've known, they're now in their 30s, but I knew them when they were children, and something was up with them back when. There was something missing. I couldn't figure it out, because they would come over to the house, and I've known them for 20 years, and a lot of them now are, if they're not in jail, they're homeless, and taking all kind of strange medications and all that, stealing, beating up people, but if they want something, they'll call, and of course, like I am, and my wife is more so, and then how you would be, Patrick. You said, "Oh yeah, come on in," and then you think that goodness, kindness, love, encouragement, and all that would kind of light up, get that candle flickering again, or something like that. And what I found is that standing back from him, these people are into manipulation, and they're very good at it. And they know what to say, and then they know that folks like us will comply, because we'll just melt. So, God, if I could just be kind to this guy, and this might turn him around, and he'll feel good, maybe change his habits and all that. That doesn't happen. The manipulation, they're very good at it. And there's what I've noticed, especially with one young man here, is this remorseless. Gets what he wants, gets either money, free place to stay, and all that, and he says the right things, but because I can't see it, I can feel the different type of energy that guy does. He's so, as I tell my wife this, he's so ripping us, and she goes, "Yeah, I know, but he needs some place to stay." I go, and so that's saddening to me, because guys like this, yes, I'm speculating that life is contrast, and that there's got to be good so you can see not good. There has to be love so you can see not love. So by contrast we can see things. But I so would like these people, especially this one young man, to embrace the life he has, because what we have in common is we're all going to die. We're all going to die. That's what we have in common. And this is what we do between now and then. So I guess, Patrick, you might think about this, to talk to the parents out there, or the husbands and wives out there, or the people out there that know folks like this who are remorseless, and they live in such high ego arrogance, and where they contemplate, that they plot, that they think of ways how to take advantage, rip off people, get away with it, and they don't care. And the more they do it, that becomes their lifestyle. And what saddens me is that there just doesn't seem to be any love there at all, and certainly not unconditional love. There doesn't be any love at all. And these people will usually meet oblivion much earlier because they'll poison their bodies, not only with the poisonous chemicals, but the poisonous thoughts, the negative energy, and what they do to other people. And a lot of drugs involved, a lot of weaponry. People get beat up. People get shot or stabbed. And I don't see any beneficial thing to come out of this. And when you look at our history with folks that we know or heard about, like a Caligula or a Nero, your Hitler, Pol Pot, your Gary Ridgway, your Ted Bundy. What would happen if they were loved more, were nurtured more, were cared for more? And we can get into the Tom Montauk stuff, which is just so answers a lot of questions for me. He's very good at details, by the way. So if everyone would want to look him up, is very good at details and explaining things. But he explains things like the spirited, people with spirit, or spiritless, people without, and those who are spirit asleep. Okay, and then adding to what you have mentioned, which he does too, it's I want to know, and I want you to tell the parents out there, the people out there, what can be a solution? How can we fix this?
Well, okay, so if you imagine, all right, so let's look at simulation theory again, and let's imagine that this is like, basically we're all playing a video game. We're all spirits who incarnate to go through these experiences here, right, learning and interacting with each other, like kind of like a hall of mirrors. And we gain and we learn and we evolve our spiritual core by, this level of interaction that we have here. Okay. Now, there was in the 70s, who would do audiobooks, a Dr. Peter Beater. And that was actually his name, Peter, and Beater with a B, B-E-T-E-R. And he actually talked about the spiritlessness. In his audio letters that he would do back in the day. You can find this information online also. Now, so this isn't anything new. And the thing is that he talked about was that they fill in the status quo, kind of like, and this is in the 70s. There weren't really any of these concepts of video games, but it's interesting because I used to play a lot of video games, and I would play games like Grand Theft Auto, which are horrible games if you think about it, but when you're raised in this society where that's promoted, that, I didn't think anything of it. But as I started to go through my awakening, and I remember it was around the time Grand Theft Auto, I believe it was 5 was out, and I got it, and I would be playing it. And as I slowly started to change up, one of the things that I noticed was that there were a lot of what they call NPCs, or non-player characters in the game, right? And they're kind of in the background there. They're carrying out various activities. They're in the game. They're walking on sidewalks. They're on their cell phones. They're talking. They're having... one day when my wife and I were at the park, we were both looking around, and it was just like the video game. And we were like, oh, that's kind of weird. And then reading this information about how they kind of fill out. I've also experienced this in some very extreme situations. Okay. Now, I don't want to go too far away from what you originally requested of me, of course. What can we do about it? What is there to be done? Well, if these people are just filling out the status quo and they're just background characters without any spirit connection, that are basically just automatrons or automations going out, carrying out various levels of programming, there really isn't much that we can do to go turn on a spark where there was no spark, or where there was never intended to be any spark, where they're just literally just like artificial intelligence, essentially. You can have a super smart, super interactive artificial intelligence, but it's still not real. There's still something missing. When it comes to people who display those kinds of behaviors, what I have learned, and I've done the same thing that you have, I've brought them into my home, I've fed them, I've taken care of them, I've given them money, only to discover that they were betraying me and my family right underneath my nose without any remorse. The only thing that you can do in those situations, and I learned this from a song and I also looked into it. There's a wonderful song by Rush on the album Clockwork Angels, and the lyrics, of course, were written by Neil Peart, who was himself somewhat of a recluse. He just recently passed away this past January, but he in all of his experience with Rush, he didn't like fame. So, and he would always, like in the famous song Limelight, he would say, "I can't pretend the stranger is a long-awaited friend." Well, then Clockwork Angels, as his life went on, a lot of people would get obsessed with him in certain ways. And in Clockwork Angels, he wrote these lyrics where he said, "All that you can do is wish them well." And what he's essentially saying is, at some point, with those kind of behavioral patterns, you can't fix them. You have to cut the cord, because the more you entertain it, they don't have any intention of getting better. They have every intention of making you think that they want to get better, while at the same time they're going to take from you and they're going to pull you down. They're going to pull you down because you're going to be confused. Cognitive dissonance, basically. It's like, okay, this person keeps telling me they want to get better, and they're pumped. They're charged. They're going to get better. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. They're going to turn their life around, right? And then they do the exact opposite whenever they walk out the door. And you're like, well, wait a minute. They just told me that. So how can that? But why is he doing that? That's so weird, And you'll get confused. And you'll get frustrated. And you'll experience all of these negative emotions that, of course, like I've said, the Archons want you to experience so that you could shut down on the chakra level. So is this something like that? Is this a big game that we play with these characters that kind of fill in the background that are specifically designed for one reason or another to come into our lives and cause chaos? And that's on the local level. And that, of course, if you look at things on the grand scale, there's a lot of chaos. So, but back to your original, what can you do about it? That's my conclusion that I've reached. You can sever the cord with negative people, negative entities, anything negative. And you can do it in calm, considerate, beneficial ways. It doesn't have to be, kicking out to the streets. You can quietly, and this is what we had to do with the gentleman who was living with us. I ended up, telling him that it was time for him to go. I had family coming in, and so I helped by paying for his exit, essentially. Yeah. I gave him money to get a room, to get a hotel. Gave him, I did it with a level of compassion. Because you don't want to sit around thinking, oh, I kicked this guy out, because you'll dwell on that, and you'll feel bad about yourself. So you want to make sure that you cut that cord in a way that is very harmonious to yourself and suitable to you, so that you're not continually carrying the extra baggage of the way that the relationship ended. And I could tell you right off the bat that they aren't going to care, and they're going to do everything in their power to maintain their emotional control over you, by making you feel guilty, by making you feel this, by making you feel that. Of course, you have to tune that out and know in your mind that you're really actually doing the best for them that can be done at this point. You've tried everything else. You've brought them into your life. You've fed them. You've clothed them. You've given them your clothes. Literally, this was my experience. And you did everything you could, and then you gently let them out, and then you cut the cord. Because if you've got, and this is a very famous saying, everybody knows this, if you're attached to a weight and you get thrown into the water with it, well, guess what that weight's going to do? It's going to literally pull you down with it, unless you cut the chain, cut the cord like an anchor or something,
Yeah.
So,
oh boy.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. It's just, one, I know you're going to say that, but you said it so eloquently. It says especially more so with my wife and this one particular young man and some other folks she knows, it's that giving harder for that goodness that's always overflowing. And what we erroneously do, myself included, is that we're also awaiting that wake up, like, oh, so it's that overflowing gratitude and all that. Wow, thank you. Oh, I want to change. And in which case that will never happen. So I like your way of explaining that, and thanks to Rush, your favorite band, those words is that you have to let them go. And what I've learned here, and a lot of this, from you, just meeting you, is love and forgiveness. You see, because it's like, I can't change you. I would like you to have a better life and all that, but I'm not you, and I don't know why things worked out this way. But we have to say goodbye. And I send you love, I send you forgiveness, and best of luck to you like that. But that's personal growth on my part, and other people too, because we're like you, Patrick, and Rochelle, used to giving, and then what I've learned with that is that what a not so great feeling when you're all gived out. It's like, oh, and it's like, oh, I don't like how this feels, and so unless you can understand that and come to terms with that, then eventually you will be gived out, and it doesn't feel good, because that's not who I am, that's not who you are, and it feels just gross. But for these other folks, we want a outcome for them that what we want, but that's not what they want, and so from there it's like, okay, I just send you love, and then I send you forgiveness, and also direct it to myself, and it's time that you get on. But why I wanted to make a show like this is because there are a lot of people out there like that, and a lot of parents that go, what could I have done? What could I have done? And just listening to you, studying you, and then Tom Montauk and David Icke, is that I don't think there could be much else except you give love and forgiveness, and that's it. And I like your analogy, because unless you got that cord, that that 100-pound toxic lead weight is just going to sink everyone down to the bottom, and you all die. And so, it's up to us to live our greatest lives, and at our highest energetic levels, and at our highest expression. And then, so we have to take that on for ourselves, and whoever else is out there, they're going to have to do that for them to whatever levels they want. But what we do have control over is love and forgiveness. And so, that's why it's for a lot of these folks out there, I would like you to, use that ploy, that strategy, because for you is that we should be happy all the time, and by sending love, sending forgiveness, we're still in control over our lives. And then this is the type of energy you want to send to them, and it's up to them how they want to use their energy. So anyway, thank you, Patrick. Well, what a great show here. I think you've answered a lot of questions, and like I said, the more people can get a hold of you and Tom Montauk and David Icke, I think the better. There's so much information out there that folks just do not know, because everyone is stuck in this very shallow academic psychology, and that's what you learn when you go to see a counselor or a psychiatrist and all that. It's very shallow. It's never deep enough to really get to know, to understand why we do what we do, and why we feel the way we feel, and where energy comes from, and just the true meaning of karmic consequence. Okay, because these are patterns, and where do you get these patterns? Okay, and what's we have to all understand is that a lot of times, when the deal is done, unless you can change that energy, change your pattern, install a new one, a lot of times nothing gets done. But if for those who are spiritless, that's according to Tom, it's just that's the way that thing is. There's not degrees of spiritless. You are or you aren't. And that's saddening to me. But I also share that that life and all that, because I will die someday, and like you and everyone else will. So it's up to me of what kind of life I want to live, and mine is to share goodness, educate, inspire, and empower, and just like you are. And I will continue doing that, and no matter who that is out there, that needs it. Okay, but Patrick, thank you for a wonderful show here. And like I said, this answers a lot of questions. And hey, if you like this show, please write in and tell us, or tell your friends, because we're going to have shows like this that will answer a lot of questions of yours, every week. And we want to make your lives, just give you the type of tools, strategies that you need to live that life that you most love to live. Okay, so anyway, Patrick, thanks so much, and let's do this again next week. And everyone, if you like this, please tell your friends, and let's get everyone here, just more filled with knowledge, and so they can make better decisions with their lives. So, Patrick, thanks so much, and we'll check everyone out.
There's one thing that I did want to add real quick. I was over here trying to find a place to insert it, and yeah. An important thing about people who give, and there's nothing wrong with giving. Nothing. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. The most wonderful way to give is unconditionally. Don't even look for a thanks. Just that's the best way to give. Because even looking for a thanks is you're trying to get some sort of ego feedback there for yourself. But all right, I don't mean to dig or poke too far. But all right, now what can happen when you give and you give and you give and nothing happens? That can backfire on you in a very big way. When you don't really realize when it is time to cut the cord, and you've given everything, including your shirt. Well, guess what happens if the person is still carrying out their same programming and their same behaviors? Guess who you blame for it not working? Yourself. You begin blaming yourself. I've done everything. What's wrong with me? Why can't I break through to this person? This person might not even exist to ever be broken through to. Now, that doesn't, like I said, that doesn't mean that you become, compassionless and you just, or mean to the people or anything like that. There's gentle ways of doing things. But I did want to say at that one point when you did bring that up, that you can give and give and give and give, and it can backfire, and you have experienced that many times in my life. And I also, to the viewing audience, a lot of these topics that I've discussed, from archons to a negative force to the spiritless and stuff, we'll provide information at the bottom of the screen, and also on our sites where you could find more information. And I'll also put up Tom's site, which is montalk.net, montalk.net. Yep. Read through Tom's stuff. His esoteric material is incredible. His conspiracy material is incredible. His spiritual material is incredible. And Tom is an incredible guy. And Tom we will eventually get him on to do a three-way conversation here, and that'll be good. And well, that's pretty much all I got. Please, email me. If I know I came out and I might have, trying to summarize a lot of this stuff is difficult. So if you have more questions about it, I don't mind giving very thorough answers. So email us, email me, email Dr. Randall, and thank you very much for having me on, and very glad to have done an episode 2. And as this evolves, I'm sure I'll be able to hone in more on what I'm trying to say. So, but anyways, thanks again, everybody. And thank you, Dr. Randall. So appreciate it.
Well, another great show. And then, no, you are just wealth. Wealth, and it's not only information, but also you're oozing love too. So appreciate that, everyone. Thanks so much. We'll check you out next time.
Bye.